Yeah, so my name is Callum Hilditch-Crimes. I'm the writer and director of Love the Craft.
You said that very slow there, didn't you? Like people in the back. Yeah. Anthony Birtwhistle, DOP.
Where did the idea for this come from?
So, technically speaking, it was one of those projects that actually snowballed, and I had been working for quite a while to build my sort of basic skills up when it came to camera work, learning obviously lenses, cameras, lighting, all the basics, and I was doing photography and video with my job and trying to absorb as much knowledge as possible. And it was about 2019 I was getting to the point where I thought I was doing music videos and bits and pieces like that, and I wanted to do what I always wanted to do, which was make a short film. And initially I just thought, we'll come up with a concept, shoot it across a weekend. We've got a location that we could use. We had like an attic in mind, which just seems ridiculous now when you think about it. But the kind of the point was more, well, let's shoot something and then get everything going and then carry on. And then I started to sit down, wrote out a few ideas, a few drafts of different things, sent them and actually saw them, the earlier stuff, and crossed some off. And at the time I'd just started reading H.P. Lovecraft's collection of work and became quite a big fan. I've always read quite a bit. I've got a lot of books and trying to get through them, it's not even close. But I'd picked up, you'll probably have seen it, it's the big Necronomicon collection, the big black binded one. It's about 1,000 odd pages, and I'd read about halfway through that. And I always knew about like Cthulhu, but none of the other bits and pieces. And I just found it really interesting to get stuck into. Like, I always like things with a lot of lore, and I wanted to take that, but I'm not always a big fan of, like, there's nothing wrong with it, of course, but I'm always a big fan of trying to have something that's more yourself and isn't just a carbon copy of, like, well, here's this story told in this way. And that's why I went sort of my own path with it, and the way I went about it was, writer's block's a frustrating thing. We've all dealt with it. We can all relate to it. And I thought it would make a really good vehicle for the story of a writer trying to get through his block, comparable to the monsters of the Lovecraftian world. So he's trying to get past his writer's block, and we've got this big, huge creature and eldritch gods, and that was kind of the idea that he's trying to push through it, and that's the representation for his writer's block.
It's sort of like fighting your own demons to get through it, but actually giving it a sort of a form.
Yeah, and also, so by the end of the short, the question to be posed of what do we sacrifice to get through the writer's block, like, well, any block, not just writer's block, to get through that and push through where we get stuck. What do you give up in the process? Because there's obviously lots of things that the more you do, the more you realise you have to sacrifice, whether it's things like social life, and you have disagreements with people, this and that. And just the idea of an eldritch god being a representation of that, I just thought worked really well, and then would also be a really nice narrative to explore. So yeah, that's
Is that a newly added question?
a newly added question.
That's the first time I've heard that.
No. So yeah, and then it built up from that. So we went from, okay, well, I had a look at the location we were thinking of. This isn't going to work. Let's look at something else. And then initially it was, well, I've got my own equipment that I have. Let's use that. Okay, no, that's not going to cut it. And another idea for the project, which I don't know if people always kind of want to talk about is, because I got to that point where it's like, right, I want to make a short film, and getting started, kicking off from doing music videos and stuff. How much can I push it? No longer just a case of let's do a short film, just to do the first one, but how good can I make it? How good can we get the locations, the effects, the acting, the set, everything like that. So yeah, and it went from there.
So how did you go about getting your team together, getting Anthony on board and getting your actor on board? And were these people you already knew, or did you have to go out and find them?
Right, so I'll explain some and I'll let Ant explain some. So me and Ant knew each other through a mutual acquaintance, and it's someone that I used to work with, and so we met through him, and naturally both interested in films. We started talking about stuff like that, and like I say, he saw a lot of the really early drafts and ideas and bits and pieces, and we've talked about projects together and bounced ideas about. So because of that, I felt kind of comfortable to go to him and say, yeah, I've got this, and are you interested? Let's work together on this. As far as the actor goes, Will Cross, I went through the sort of online web route, and is it Star? Yeah, Star Now.
Yes.
I ended up having a look through there for sort of people in the Manchester area, because that's where we're based, and it just made sense. And I found Will quite early on, truthfully, and it was just one of those where you see a person and the character in your head solidifies into that person. I didn't really have an idea as to... So technically speaking, the character's name is Neville, but that's never come across in the film because it didn't need to. And when I saw sort of Will's profile and stuff like that, I thought, yeah, that's who I want.
He looks like a Neville.
Yeah, he's a Neville. That's who I want. And I went through a new process for me, where I contacted him and then got in touch with his agent, and then had a meeting with him and his agent, and then you've got all these questions of what's the project about, what's behind it, this and that, which, was...
Promise that you'll pay.
Yeah, and there's always the question of payment, isn't there? Which is, particularly when you have an agent there.
Company or an actual, established filmmaker, obviously people are always going to get shafted.
Right. Yeah. It does happen.
Yeah, which was completely fine, but there's then like all the considerations of, you've got the agent's fee, the actor's fee, there's stuff like that. And then in terms of the crew, the crew, I will say before I pass on to Ant, were absolutely fantastic, and I know everyone always says it, but it wouldn't have been possible without them, wouldn't have been possible without everyone involved, and I'm still absolutely amazed at the job that they did and how well we all worked together on set, and I had a brilliant time, and super, super thankful for their support. But I will let Ant explain, because it was him that brought them on and got them involved.
So I went through my old uni and got some students involved. I went back and did like a day with them, and it was at the same time we were preparing for this, so it was like, I just kind of plucked the best ones out really and asked, would you like to be involved? And yeah, they actually shown up and turned up, which was great, and yeah, did an amazing job.
And the location that you're in, I mentioned it in the Q&A, but honestly, it's massive. It looks amazing, and you kind of downplayed it a little bit before, but you've done a fantastic job there. Like, yeah, lenses and everything, but you still have to have the eye for it. Seeing it up on the screen today, it looked outstanding. So it's like,
it was nice seeing it like that. It's surprising, because obviously it brings out everything that isn't there, as well as what is. But yeah, ultimately, I guess the lights that we used there were 4 lights. One was an LED panel about the same quality as that, which was kind of the worst of the bunch, and I was a bit, that's the one, like when he's sitting at the front, thing. When he's sitting at the table and it's like a front-on shot, it's on the floor, and I always look at it. It's like, oh, it's so flat. Oh, I hate it. So that's the one light that I hated. But the others, you don't really see them out on much stuff now, which I'm really surprised. But they're called Dado lights. DEDO lights. Yeah, just in case they sound like anything else. And they come in a pack of 3, and they're great because they can be incandescent, they can be tungsten, they can be whatever you need them to be, and you can mix and match them. They come with dimmers, you can scrim them, all sorts, and they're super powerful despite being tiny lights that you could plug into any kind of circuitry. They're just on a 13 amp fuse. You can use them for a lot more than people realise, because normally when I'm on stuff, if I do see it, it's for a little, for a shot on somebody's hand or something like that, and it's like, oh, okay, fair enough. But I always knew you could use it for a bit more than that. So for the budget that we had, we couldn't really afford anything bigger or any more lights, so I knew that they really packed a punch, and the fact that they came with a dimmer built in, and you could use them just, anywhere on just a basic plug.
Well, what you were using
perfect.
absolutely works, because your greens are super green, and it's just one of the things.
Yeah, that was a post thing there. Yeah, it wasn't initially green. I went a lot more amber and stuff. Yeah.
He went against you.
Yeah, but it worked well, because
No,
obviously there was so much green there anyway that when you did kind of pull it out a bit, yeah, I've come to love it.
You've come to love it.
At first I was very like, wow, that's completely the opposite. And now I'm like, actually, no, it's fine. It's better. It works. Yeah.
Didn't agree with it at first, but yeah. So, yeah, the post-production side of sort of the look, I've always edited in Premiere Pro myself. So I edited the short in that, and then all the colour grading was done in Resolve, as most things are in standard, as the industry standard for colour grading. And it was my first time sort of learning that and touching that. I'd only briefly looked at it prior, and I spent a good chunk of time, and we did other tests with other bits and pieces to properly learn it before I went to Love of the Craft. And we had temporary LUTs on there as just like, well, we're figuring out the edit, it doesn't need to have a finished look. And I mean, crazy enough, with one of them we were going to go with, and then we were like, no, we can't use the LUT as our finished look. So yeah, I taught myself Resolve and built out the node tree and everything, and as I briefly kind of mentioned, had some other things going on. So we had the bulk of the look, and the thing that brings out the green is there's a shift on, I think it's the gain and the offset of Resolve, which brings out a lot more of the green. And the reason that I went that route instead of the sort of warm amber that we had was to bring out the palette of the location. And obviously anyone that's familiar with Lovecraft will know green's a big thing for that sort of stuff. And it was actually Ant did get me to tone it down a bit, because I did go a bit mental at first. Yeah, and I went and had a little break and a calm down, and I looked at it, I was like, yeah, he's right, this is a bit too green. So yeah, brought it back, and there's all the things of like matching each shot and everything. And then the little sort of sprinkles we had at the end, so we shot on the Aria mirror, and then I used something called, what is it? Neat Video, and that was basically a denoiser. It was a really good denoiser, and that pulled all of the noise, like the digital noise, out of the image, and you have to tweak it a little bit. And then I then re-added some noise in, but as film grain using Dehancer, and because that's a lot nicer and more natural, and added that in, and didn't use any of the, because it comes with a bunch of film stocks and stuff like Kodak 185 and all those bits and pieces that you get, and I didn't use any of that. I just wanted kind of the grain and some of the halation and bloom that's in there, because one thing we were lacking a little bit was filters on the day. Yeah, it was a budget thing, and so I went and added some bloom in to have like similar to like a Pro Mist filter or something like that, and soften out some of the highlights and stuff. And yeah, it's just the last little bits once you've built everything up and done all the like color space transformations and all that. And yeah, I mean, I spent a good long while. I went and bought like one of the Blackmagic units to output to a monitor at proper 422 10-bit. So because we were looking at different tests, we had it on your TV, my TV, phones, all sorts, and it was looking different everywhere, and it was driving me absolutely insane. I thought I was going to lose it, and then I think I'd get it, and then I'm like, no. Got it on, and then by the time I even got that and put it onto a TV, I'd solved it anyway. I think I'd done something with the colour space transformation. Yeah, it was just learning all that was really interesting, and that goes back again to like what I was saying about just wanting to push everything as much as possible. So how good can I get a colour grade, and how much can I learn? And I felt like I learned a lot in various departments, from the writing to the directing to visual effects, colour grading and editing, and all across the whole, even things like meeting up with actors and their agents and stuff. It was a whole new process for me, so I'm so glad that everything happened the way it did, and that I was able to learn as much from it as I can to go forward for future projects.
Well, talking about future projects and talking about going forward, are we potentially looking at maybe a Lovecraftian sort of cosmic kind of feature?
I mean, I would absolutely love that completely, and I'd be down to do that. And I think Ant would also be interested. Yeah.
Would you stick to kind of like horror as well?
Yeah, I'd probably push it like a little bit more. I mean, for me, Lovecraft it's not like, obviously, that you have Lovecraftian media, Colour Out of Space, which we specifically avoided watching until after we'd shot everything and whatnot, because I didn't want any influences from it. But that's brilliant. Yeah, it's never been like, not loads of it is sort of body gore, even though you have stuff like John Carpenter's The Thing and that, which is still very Lovecraftian, but also body horror. I've always found it more in the interesting side of it to be the cosmic horror, the thought of same sort of thing of like what the stuff that we can see in life and how it can warp our perspective, and the maddening aspect of it. I think that's more interesting to explore personally. That's
kind of what I really liked about your short as well, is that it's what you don't see, and it's what you're building up towards, and because anything you can put on screen isn't going to be as bad or as twisted as I can have in my head,
Yeah.
So you just have to like build that up. But that's what I liked about yours. Just kind of builds it and builds it and builds it, and then you don't really show too much.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah, I'm glad that come across. Yeah, because I think it's easy sometimes to get too excited, and I certainly felt like it was like, oh yeah, you can have all like really crazy sort of things and going on. But yeah, I think some of the deeper subtext, I mean, Lovecraft in general is obviously, like I mentioned, is a tricky writer because of his views on other people of different races, his extreme racism, and that's made him, rightfully so, problematic for the modern day. But once you kind of ignore or get through all that and looking at his subtext for his work and just his natural fear and distrust of everything and how that fueled his writing, it's just like the simplest things allegorically exploded into these behemoths of his imagination, which I think sort of fueled a bit by paranoia and anxiety and stuff that I think most people can actually relate to, but in a fantastical, horrific way. Yeah.
We also kind of have to be able to separate the art from the artist.
Yeah.
We have to be able to do that because, like you say, some of the fantastical stuff he was writing, it was just mind-blowing and unbelievable. I don't really care what he thinks about things, you know, like
Yeah.
just let me enjoy the work.
Yeah, it's funny because I hadn't really thought about it too much. I kind of noticed a bit of stuff, and I hadn't got super far into the collection.
Yeah.
And then I'd heard about it on a couple of YouTube videos and stuff I was looking at. And then I'm pretty sure, like, the very next story I read, I was like, oh, there it is. Yeah, that's quite rough. But if it makes anyone feel any better, he had a really rough life. So, you know, what goes around comes around.
Exactly. Well, on that, we will wrap it up now, but I have one question that you may have heard me ask the guys from Type Till You Bleed. I do have one question I always like to ask before I finish these things, and that is, any filmmaker that I speak to, any creator that I speak to, cinematographers especially, when I ask them what they thought of the film on screen, they'll tell me everything that was wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
They'll say, oh, I could have tweaked this, I could have tweaked that could have been shorter, that could have been longer. Today, when you were watching this on the screen, on screen 1, screen 2 through there, what did you see, or what have you seen when you've been watching on a big screen that you're just so unbelievably proud of and think, I absolutely smashed that?
Do you have something you want to say? I'll have a...
If you have something, yeah. Generally speaking, I'm very happy that it actually was on the screen, and that all the effort that Callum put in himself, and you are talking 2 years worth of sitting at a computer and doing things that I don't think anybody will want to have to learn to do, like sign removals and things like that, like just things that you don't want to do when you're editing. You want to have fun, don't you? And it's not fun, is it? It's just not. All the hard work that he put in, all the money that he put into it, that it didn't go to waste, and that he gets to see it on the screen for his granddad as well, isn't it? So I think that's the best bit about it overall. Yeah.
I mean, for me, the obvious one is the big visual effects sequence at the end, because that was... It's even the build up to it, like Ant mentions, of sign removals, which it was funny because that was even harder really to actually learn and do than the actual...
As well. I'm the one who said it.
I couldn't unsee it.
That I work with, because I work in film and TV, and one of them mentioned about the signs, who I really do trust with it all and everything. He was saying you can't have them there because it's literally it's exits, it's museum, the scripture, whatever, and you could really see it as well, like it. And he's done a VFX breakdown for it, which he's not put up online yet, but you can really see just how there's still some stuff left, because it kind of ran out of time with it all because it was taking forever. But it's like 70% has gone, hasn't it? And stuff that was there was like glowing neon exit signs and all sorts that. It just ruins the illusion. It's all that money and time and effort just goes to waste, because the first thing that I shown it to somebody, kind of like a professional person, the first thing said was, the exit sign is right in my face there, and I thought it was a fantasy. Why would you be dreaming about an exit sign?
I get that.
So it's like I pushed him to do it. I didn't think it was necessarily possible. I was a bit nervous saying something, but then he went away and learnt it, and then 2 or 3 weeks later it was 70% sign removed somehow. So,
that's awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that all was reasonably painful, but also an incredibly useful skill to kind of know. And then, the main actual effect sequence was really exciting. I've sort of been learning Blender recently to try and get more into 3D to make it kind of even better. I think for me, if it wasn't to be that as kind of the obvious answer, I'm actually really happy with the one-ers, the one takes in there.
Down the stairs and
and the final sequence in general, the way it kind of flows together was really, even though it didn't take super long to edit, it was just because it had been, the way it had been shot and whatnot, just pieces fell in, and I don't think one-ers are for everyone, but I like what I wanted was to have this build up to reveal stuff, not just immediately be like, okay, right here, you have to have a quick bit of pace, but also a slow burn. And I'm really happy with how those came out and the framing of everything, and that was what was in my head for the whole thing.
brilliant. And I have to say, seeing it up on the screen today was just incredible. It's just like, because I'd only seen it on my laptop, and I've got a tiny laptop, so seeing it up on the big screen today was really, really cool. I loved that. Thank you so much for giving us the movie. Thank you for submitting it and letting us show it. And most of all, thank you for turning up today and just giving us the time to chat to you.
No worries. If I can say one last thing.
Absolutely.
It would just be, again, like I say, a thank you to everyone that was involved. Thank you to, we had obviously the location, Victoria Baths, and also a thank you, as it says in the film anyway, to Media Dog, because they were absolutely champion with our equipment. We had some very last minute changes and they were super gracious with it. So thanks to everyone.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
No problem.